You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to another live edition of the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast brought to you by 90 Min. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou, and on this edition, we're going to be discussing the latest Arsenal transfer news. And the headline today is, of course, with regards to Joe Willock. Now, the story was broken yesterday by 90min.com. It was put out there, and we're going to dig a little bit deeper into it. We're going to discuss it at length during this episode. We're also going to be providing you updates on the future of Cedric Soares, and we're going to be providing you details of a report that alleges Arsenal are planning a £50 million swoop for two players from the same club. So lots and lots to get through. We're also going to be taking your questions in the live chat as well. Big hello to everybody watching us live at present. Let's say hello to Big H, to Chantel, to Super Latua, to Archituthis. Have I said that right? Tebow, Steve, Mark. I hope you guys are all well. Matty K, Graham's there too. Omar, Ogochukwu, Saeed, Matt, Divesh. Welcome. Hope you're all well. Big hello to everybody who'll be watching this back a little bit later on playback, or to those of you listening via the audio platforms. You're all equally appreciated. But without further ado, let's get stuck in to some of this transfer news, and we're going to kick off with the report regarding Joe Willock. Now, in a 90-minute exclusive, it was reported that Newcastle United and Arsenal have reached an agreement over the transfer of Joe Willock. However, Newcastle United are waiting on the player with regards to whether or not this is going to materialize and whether or not this deal is going to be completed. Now, it's alleged that the fee agreed between the two clubs could rise up to £25 million with add-ons. But Newcastle are in a bit of a tough spot right now because they've put their cards on the table. They've made it clear that they want Joe Willock. Apparently, according to this report, Arsenal were actually willing to allow Joe Willock to leave on loan initially, with Newcastle taking an option to buy on the player. But it seems that Newcastle don't want that. Newcastle want it now. You know, Newcastle want Joe Willock. They want to sign him up. They don't want to wait any longer to do this deal permanently from fear of maybe other clubs coming in. But they do see him as a key target. They do see him as a long-term investment. That's what it says in the piece. And the outlay for Newcastle is a significant one. And apparently it exceeds the club's initial summer budget that had initially been limited to around £20 million. So Newcastle, very clear in the fact that Joe Willock is their number one transfer target. Now, a fee rising to potentially 25 million for me is a good deal. I think I would take that money and I would run a country mile. I think that Joe Willock is a talented boy. I think that Joe Willock has the potential to go on and have a very, very good career. However, do I think that Arsenal is the place for him to hit his kind of, or hit the heights that he's going to hit? Do I think that Arsenal suits him at this moment in time, given the way we play and given the way he likes to play? No, I don't. I don't think that Joe Willock fits into this current Arsenal system. I've said it before, without kind of going on and on about it. Joe Willock, for me, is not a number 10. He's more of a number 8. But Arsenal, do they play with a number 8 right now? Maybe they could in the future. But I don't see Joe Willock as somebody who can play as part of that double midfield pivot in the kind of way that Mikel Arteta wants them to play. I don't think he's quite functional to do that job. I don't think it suits him. And I think that actually, if he's just going to hang around the Emirates Stadium and be a bit part player, it's not fair on Joe Willock, who, as I say, has got talent and really, really flourished, didn't he, in the second half of last season at Newcastle United. So I don't think it's fair on Joe Willock, but I also don't think it's good business from Arsenal to keep hold of a player who right now is at the absolute peak in terms of his value. Joe Willock has come into this summer off the back of, I think, scoring 7 goals in 7 Premier League games. You're not going to get more money for Joe Willock at any other point, because especially if he stays at the Emirates Stadium and doesn't play and is a bit part player, then that value that he currently holds and that stock is simply going to decrease, and it's going to decrease so rapidly, so quickly, that Arsenal are going to miss out on a lot of money. A deal that brings in up to 20 to 25 million could significantly bolster Arsenal's kind of transfer kitty. It obviously means that with the guarantee of that money coming in, they can go out and strengthen, and they can throw that money behind, somebody else. And, I just think it makes sense. I just think it's a no-brainer. Let's go over to the comments and see what some of you guys are saying. I just want to touch on this one from AS Ruse 878. He says, Harry, you need a camera ASAP. The quality of the content is better than the quality of the camera. I know it is. And I have got a camera. I bought one the other day. The only thing is I'm trying to work out, because it's a proper camera, not a webcam, how I can use it as a webcam, because what I'm having an issue with at the moment is USB ports on the MacBook. So I've got one with the Ethernet cable plugged in, one with the microphone plugged in. That's all I've got, two. And when I put an adapter in, it significantly reduces the quality either of the internet signal or of the microphone. So I'm trying to find a way around this, but I've got the camera, just need maybe a tech genius to hit me up so I can work out how to turn it into a webcam, as well as being able to use it for other things. But you're right, and I'm aware of that. So thank you for letting me know. Let's see what else we've got here in terms of your thoughts on the whole Willock thing. Jean Rene says he's not happy with the fee, to be honest. I'm happy with it. I think it's reasonable. I'm interested to know what people think we should be getting for Joe Willock, if they disagree with £25 million being a worthwhile fee, because how much more can you ask for? I mean, Joe Willock, as I say, had a really good end to last season, 7-7, I think it was, for Newcastle United, showed himself to be a real impact player, and really, in many ways, helped them kind of escape the potential of relegation. But outside of that, has he really, outside of those few games at the back end of last season, has he really proved himself to be at the highest level? I would argue no. And so I think that fee is reasonable. Sai says, I'm really sorry to see him go, but after his recent form, the timing is right. Sad though. What else have we got? Arsenal Fan Circle channel says, Harry, in time, I think we may see Willock will be a better player than James Maddison. That's a big claim. I think Joe Willock's qualities are different, and it's why I don't think he fits here. I think Joe Willock is best when Joe Willock can start from a deeper position, has a bit of freedom, has a bit of kind of a license to get forward whenever he wants into kind of dangerous areas, the edge of opponents' penalty areas, drift into penalty areas, make runs beyond centre forwards. That's what Joe Willock's good at. But if you're asking Joe Willock to sit in a deeper midfield, dictate play, pass the ball accurately, I don't think that's his game. And I think that in this Arsenal side, where Mikel Arteta's clearly got two types of midfielder, he's got that deeper lying midfielder who, yes, he expects to be able to break between the lines, to play balls forward, to be a little bit creative and to set the tempo. And then he's got the player that he does give that license and that freedom to in Emile Smith-Rowe at the moment. And I don't think that Joe Willock's game necessarily is as sophisticated as Emile Smith-Rowe. I don't think he will do what Emile Smith-Rowe is as well, in terms of link up with those players around him and provide that creative spark and guile that Arsenal were missing prior to the young man's kind of appearance onto the scene midway through last season. So I think that Willock, has got ability. I just don't think what Willock brings to the table necessarily fits into the current philosophy. And for that reason, you've got to consider selling him. And when somebody's offering £25 million, I think that's more than reasonable. I think it really, really is. Sonny says that use the funds to reinvest in a quality player who improves us immediately. Absolutely. We need players that improve us immediately. For years and years and years, it's been about maybes. It's been about this guy's got potential. And I think there are some players that you can invest in that are young, right? You can invest in Emile Smith-Rowe because you know that quality is 100% there. There's no doubt in my mind that Emile Smith-Rowe has what it takes to go on to the highest level. There's no doubt in my mind about Bukayo Saka either, but there is doubt about Joe Willock. There is doubt about Eddie Nketiah. There is doubt about Reece Nelson. And that's why, for me, if the right money comes in, And I'm not for a second suggesting these guys should be sold on the cheap, but if the right money comes in, I think 25 mil is more than fair for Joe Willock, then I think you've got to just let them go. Let's see what else we've got. Gooner Legend says, sell Willock for 25 million, buy Awar for 25 million. Job done. Yeah, look, if it was that simple, it would be great, wouldn't it? But I guess in theory, it's something that's achievable. You know, we know that that's around about Leon's asking price for the midfielder, and we know that Newcastle are keen to take Joe Willock. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier on, the big stumbling point here with regards to this Joe Willock move is Joe Willock himself at this moment in time. It's understood that he's not yet made his mind up on whether Newcastle is the place for him, whether moving to the northeast is what he wants. And I think Newcastle are a little bit frustrated by this because they have, by all accounts, met Joe Willock's demands. They are, willing to go that extra mile to get them. We've already talked about them exceeding what was set out to be their summer transfer budget to make that deal happen. So I do think that, they are very keen to do it. And I guess the longer this goes on, the more frustrated they might end up becoming if Joe Willock is dragging his heels about making a decision. Abhishek Chowdhury says, didn't we have a similar player to Willock not too long ago in our squad? Ramsey fit in our 11, so why not Willock, who has better attributes? I think we played differently to the way we did when Aaron Ramsey was at the club. Mikel Arteta plays in a very different way, and I don't think that there is room for a number 10, a specialist number 10, and Joe Willock. I think we talk a lot about midfield shapes and structures, and we talk a lot about the idea that Mikel might move to a 4-3-3, but there's been no real sign of that yet. We've talked about it, and we've talked about that might be the long-term goal and the long-term aspiration, but it's not happened yet. So at this moment in time, as I say, I don't think you can fit in a midfielder like Joe Willock, who is, if you shackle him down and you take away that license to get forward, then you basically mute Joe Willock. That's what Joe Willock does. And I think playing in the deeper position requires a lot more discipline. But equally, I don't think he's good enough to play as the number 10. And so it just disrupts the whole balance of the side, in my opinion. I think one of the reasons we have overall, and I know pre-season hasn't necessarily shown it, but why Arsenal do look a more stronger defensive unit under Mikel is because that balance has been, all right, maybe not spot on because we've lost a little bit in an attacking sense, but it's been closer to being right than what we saw previously. And I just don't think that you can fit a Willock and Emile Smith-Rowe in the same side. And for me, there's only one player that's, head and shoulders above the other when it comes to those two. And there's only one I'd be prioritizing. And unfortunately, it's not Joe Willock. Now, I feel like I'm being negative about Joe Willock, and I feel like I'm putting the kid down, and I'm not. That is not my intention whatsoever. I'm just trying to be realistic about what I see from Joe Willock. I'm just trying to be realistic about how he could fit into the bigger picture. Realistic about the fact that I don't think at any other point in his career will we see such a lucrative offer for him come in. And I just think that all this talk about Joe Willock is hypothetical, and he hasn't actually shown for Arsenal at Premier League level that he can do it week in, week out. And so, if you're going to go and play for Newcastle, with all due respect to Newcastle United, the expectation is very, very different. Newcastle United, if they finish mid-table and you pop up once every 3 weeks and make a contribution, that's seen as positive, that's seen as acceptable. The Newcastle fans may disagree, but the wider world look at Newcastle as a club that should be around about mid-table now. Whereas for Arsenal, there is an expectation week in, week out to deliver to the highest level. And Joe Willock, I would say, hasn't really proven that he can do that just yet. Right, let's move on from the Joe Willock stuff, and we'll come back to your questions a little bit later on, I'm sure. Let's just take this one from Chris, finally, one of our members. He says, hey, H, hope you're well. I'm good, man. Hope you are too. He says, it's sad to see promising youngsters leave, but it's about time to get some money back from the academy, that being players like Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe or funds. Thanks, Joe, but I think it's time. Yeah, that's my sentiment exactly. A couple of you suggested maybe a buyback clause in there. I don't see, I mean, if I was a club like Newcastle United, would I want a buyback clause? No, but if it was absolutely necessary to do the deal, then I'd maybe consider it. But what are you going to set that buyback clause at, I guess, is the big is the big thing. Right, let's move on. Let's start talking about Cedric Soares, who continues to be linked with a move away from the club this summer. Now, Cedric Soares is somebody who, I think can do a job. I think he's a decent deputy. I'm not sure who I'd go with right now between him and Callum Chambers. Every time I make my mind up on one, the other one kind of shows me something that makes me feel that he would maybe be, or one of them shows me something that makes me feel not so confident about him. And then I look at the other one. There is rumors and reports coming out of Turkey from Fanatic, that's the name of the publication, linking the Portuguese defender with a move to Fenerbahce. Now, of course, Fenerbahce have had a long-standing interest in Cedric. We've heard about this before. It's not a new thing, but it seems like there is an appetite on their part, at least, to get that deal done this summer. Now, Mikel Arteta is said to be extremely happy with Cedric Soares at the moment. There were reports a few days ago that went as far as saying that he was in line to start the game against Brentford next Friday night. And I found that really, really interesting because whenever he's had the opportunity, he's picked Callum Chambers ahead of him of late anyway, especially during pre-season. And then we've seen Hector Bellerin, who's seemingly outbound, get picked ahead of Cedric Soares. So that kind of contradicts the report, doesn't it, that we've had on how impressive Soares has been in training. And this one, a little bit of a twist that's been thrown into it, something that I hadn't read up to now about this particular story, is that David Dein is said to be involved. Former Arsenal chairman, of course, David Dein involved, or vice chairman, I should say. David Dein involved in this. He's supposedly friends, a very close friend of the Fenerbahce president, Ali Koç, and supposedly he is helping to try and get that negotiation done. I find that one a little bit strange. It is coming from a Turkish outlet that I don't want to slag them off, but I don't know them to be particularly reputable from things I've read from them in the past. So I'm not going to get carried away on this one. But I just thought it was interesting and worth noting because it completely contradicts what we've been hearing about Cedric Soares from sort of Arsenal sources over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, watch this space on that one. Just another story that I wanted to touch on, and I mentioned that Arsenal have been linked with a double swoop to the value of £50 million for two players from the same club. And those two players are, drumroll, Aaron Ramsdale and Sander Berge. Now, those two currently play their football at Sheffield United. Both are said to be targets for Arsenal. Sander Berge has been more of a long-standing target as far as the Gunners are concerned. And it seems, according to The Sun, I know it's The Sun, take it with a pinch of salt, but apparently Arsenal are considering making a double offer to try and bring those two to the club. Now, that would address two areas that I do think we need to address. Aaron Ramsdale would come in, you'd assume, to compete with Bernd Leno in between the sticks, and Sander Berge would be coming in to help Arsenal in the midfield. I think he's a player with potential, but I do think he kind of came to English football, looked as though he was going like that, and then kind of hit a bit of a roadblock, and he's kind of he's stagnated a little bit in terms of his development. I think there's a part of that you have to attribute to the fact that he's been playing in a really poor side. Sheffield United were woeful last season, weren't they? But yeah, that's the latest coming from The Sun with regards to Arsenal's interest in those two players. I do think Arsenal will will probably bring in a couple of players. I don't know who they'll be, but in terms of how viable this report is, I do think they're at least going to bring in a couple of players, and so you can't completely rule this out. This is a great comment from Matt G. He says, David Dein, Harry, this feels like an episode out of EastEnders when Dirty Den comes back and says, get out of my pub. Love that. If you're a non-UK listener and you don't know what EastEnders is, it is a soap opera based in the old East End of London. And yeah, there's been a few scenes like that. So if you're not from the UK, you're probably thinking, what the hell are these lot talking about? But if you know, it's a great one from Matt there. I also want to say a big welcome, actually, before we move into the questions. While I'm doing this, actually, get your questions in the chat. Let's pick out some questions. I've seen that there's been a few members that have joined over the last few days, and I only get notified when you sign up if you pop up when I'm doing a stream. So unfortunately, I do miss some of the sign-ups. When you join the Discord server, I do spot you, and I do try every time and say hello and make sure I do that. So thank you to the few of you who have joined up over the last few days. I know there's been about 5 or 6 of you, so that's been incredible. If you haven't signed up for the Discord server, though, make sure you do. It's part of your membership, so you might as well use it. And I want to say a big welcome to a member who's just signed up right this minute, Michael Mellon. Thank you so much for joining the Chronicles of a Gooner channel. Really, really appreciate it. If you're listening via audio, you can sign up via our YouTube membership scheme, and you're going to receive some special content in the new season. You're going to get some different featured pieces, and I'm working on one at the moment. And you're also going to get, of course, your player ratings after the games, about an hour after the full-time whistle, which will be exclusive to our members only. So check the proposition out by clicking the link in the description, and we'd love to have you sign up. Right, keep those questions coming. Let me take some of those from the chat box, and you can see, Michael, you're getting the love in the chat already from our existing members. So welcome to the family. Also, we've got another one. Zeb has just signed up as well. Zeb, welcome to the channel. Fantastic stuff. 2 of you signing up in one live stream. What more could I ask for? Zeb, welcome. Make sure you click in the community tab on YouTube. You scroll down a little bit and click on the link to get into the Discord server. It really, really it's great to chat to you guys and interact with you guys in there as well. There's always sensible conversation going on. There's no cussing. There's no swearing. Well, no, there might be a bit of swearing. That's fine, but not to each other, which is the main thing. So do check it out. Thank you so much, Zeb, as well. Welcome to the family. Just a quick reminder as well that this podcast is brought to you by manscaped.com. So for all your male grooming needs, head over to manscaped.com. Check out the Lawnmower 4.0. It's an incredible piece of equipment, and I promise you, your partner will thank you when they see the results. It leaves you smooth, fresh, and revitalized. Get involved. Check out the Manscaped website, and if you enter our discount code, which is 90min20, you'll get 20% off of your order, as well as free shipping. So you stand to save yourself a fair chunk of cash. Right, let's go over to the questions. Let's see what we've got here. Let's take this one from Said Abdullah. He says, Harry, are you starting to worry about the lack of movement in and out in the transfer market, or are you still calm? I'm less calm than I was a week ago, put it that way. I am starting to worry a little bit. Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. You know, we are looking at Arsenal struggling to kind of get players in the door. I've always said, though, that you've got to be quite level-headed when it comes to this kind of stuff, because, you know, like Ben White said that the Arsenal deal was wrapped up ages ago, yet there was us as a fan base kind of throwing our toys out the pram for like 2 weeks, waiting for it to be announced and really worrying and starting to get frustrated about it. So I think in a sense, you've got to kind of just trust that what needs to be done is being done behind the scenes. I actually think the fact that we've not really seen any new links over the last couple of days, because we haven't really, you know, we've been talking about James Maddison, we've been talking about Willock to Newcastle, we're talking about Ramsdale, all links that have already been out there. It's probably a good sign, because I think Arsenal will prefer to go about their business quietly. And so I'm kind of hopeful that this kind of lull that we're seeing in terms of interest in new players is a consequence of Arsenal actually moving behind the scenes to get deals done. So I'm less calm than I was 2 weeks ago, put it that way. And I am starting to get a little bit worried with the Premier League season kicking off in less than a week now, or just over a week, I should say. But I'm not completely going bonkers about it just yet. I've said all along that I think a lot of our business will be done towards the back end of the window. That means the end of the month. And that means we probably will start the campaign with a kind of, not all the players that we want in, I guess is the way to put it. Let's see what else we've got here in the chat box. Walhad says, I think Arsenal should target Gonzalez Villa from AS Roma as a centre midfielder to play alongside Thomas Partey. I watch Serie A and I think the boy is class, never loses the ball, and he is made for Arsenal. I'm not so sure on VR. I've got to be honest. I know that I'd imagine that you've probably watched him more than me to kind of come to that conclusion. So I'm not going to dismiss that opinion. I think it's probably a valid one. But, you know, I've watched my fair share of Serie A. It's the league after the Premier League that I watch the most of, that I pay the most attention to. I like Gonzalo Villar. I think he's a promising player. I think he's someone that is likely to go on and get better and better, but I'm not really sure about it, if I'm honest. I'm not really sure I'd make a significant investment on Gonzalo Villar. And also, you got to think Roma have missed out on Granit Xhaka. So will they be willing to let midfield players go? I guess from that same token, you got to think that Roma's financial situation is what ultimately prevented them getting Granit Xhaka. And so if a good offer came in for the 23-year-old, who according to Transfermarkt is valued at around about 13.5 million, they might consider it. Now, he did join them from Elche in Spain back in January 2020. So he's not been there that long, VR, but yeah, decent shout, interesting shout. And I'll definitely be paying more attention to him in the new season now that you've said that. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Arsenal Legend says, Harry, what's your gut feeling about Maddison or Onana? And what's the latest regarding Lucas? Is that Lucas Torreira? In terms of Maddison, I think there is an interest there. Don't know if it's going to get done, though. I don't know if that deal is viable financially. I don't think if I'm not sure it's fiscally possible. And we're going to have to wait and see. You know, we know what Leicester want. It's just whether Arsenal are willing to stretch and go that extra mile to get that deal done. I have been quite taken aback by how willing Leicester seem to be to move on James Maddison, but they've also reiterated the point time and time again, well, Brendan Rodgers has anyway in recent press conferences, that Leicester do not need to sell. If Leicester sell, it's going to be on their terms. But as Jake Watson was saying on the show yesterday, when we were getting that Leicester perspective on things, Leicester do have form for doing this. Leicester do normally move on players in the kind of category of James Maddison quite frequently in order to keep their business model functioning. They're normally very good at replacing. So I don't think Leicester will be stressed out about the need to replace James Maddison in the event he leaves. But I do think they are in a good position whereby they don't need to sell. And so it's going to take an offer that certainly fits their kind of that certainly fits with what they're looking for and makes them feel like they have no choice but to sell. So it's got to be a bloody good offer. Matt also says, I'm not too worried about the window. I think there's a lot going on in the background. Me too. Just because we don't always know about it doesn't mean that nothing's happening. Zeb says, have you seen the reports that Ancelotti is keeping Ceballos and Ødegaard now that Kroos is injured? Does this kill our chances at Ødegaard? I'm not sure to what extent the Kroos injury is. I don't know how long he'll be out for. I think that Kroos is still head and shoulders better than both of those two players. And so I don't think that, Ancelotti would be too worried if that injury to Kroos is not necessarily long-term. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know at this point how long that injury is. But I still think if you offer the right money for Martin Ødegaard, you can get him. I really do, because Real Madrid's financial situation is that dire at the moment. Jashar says, in the last 2 years, we've invested minutes in Ceballos, El Neni, Willian and Xhaka, who Joe outscored their total goal output. Remember, we're too short-sighted, moving like a small club. Do you disagree? It's hard because when you give it the old, and I've given it this, I've done a video, didn't I, last week where I talked about the need for this to be a longer term project and the need for understanding amongst the fan base that it's going to take time for Mikel Arteta to take this team forward and for them to develop. That was met with criticism. Why are you looking at the longer term? It's about the here and now. Arsenal need to be better now. And I get that, but there needs to be a balance found, right? Because you need to find the balance between developing, looking at the long term, but also achieving what your targets are in the here and now. Arsenal need to get back into Europe now, not next year, not the year after that. It needs to happen right away. And managers along the way will take decisions that are sometimes short-sighted, but because they think that they benefit the team in the short term. And I don't think that Dani Ceballos, how do I word this without winding people up? I don't think Joe Willock would have done a better job in a deeper midfield position, if that's the way Mikel wants to play, than Dani Ceballos did. Now, maybe that's short-term in the sense that Ceballos wasn't our player, that he was always going to return to Real Madrid. But the balance needs to be found between working towards that final goal, working towards that rebuild, and working towards getting where the club need to be, but also doing what's right in terms of trying to achieve your short-term goals. So I think there is a balance to be found. I think the way you've put that is probably fair, but I think it's a little bit deeper than that. That's my personal opinion, but it's a great point, and thanks for bringing it up. What else have we got here? Let's take a couple more before we wrap up. Steve says, does the Fofana injury force Leicester's hand on Maddison? Get well soon, Fofana, and great work this summer, Harry. First of all, thank you for your kind words. And secondly, the Fofana injury is incredibly unfortunate. You know, I watched it last night. I didn't watch the game. I saw the challenge, and I thought it's not the way he first goes in, because he does make contact with the ball, but it's the way he wraps that second leg around Fofana, which ultimately leads to that fracture. It's a horrible injury, and you know, I'm not a massive Leicester City fan, but I do wish Wesley Fofana all the best. And obviously for Leicester City to suffer an injury to someone as key as Wesley Fofana is a big blow, you know, just over a week away from the season starting. So I've got sympathy for them there. Does it mean it forces their hand? I don't think it forces their hand. I still think if Leicester need to go out and do business, and we know that, of course, Johnny Evans is out as well, that Leicester do need to bring in a centre-half probably now. Can Leicester do that without selling James Maddison? I probably think they can. They're that kind of well run, and I think their owners have always shown a willingness to dig into their pockets when needs be. So I'm not worried about it, or if I were Leicester, I wouldn't be worried about it from that sense. But it might soften their stance slightly on James Maddison. It might make them a little bit more willing to do a deal than they maybe were prior to last night. I don't know. But there is a need for a centre-half at Leicester, massively. And it's whether Brendan Rodgers thinks he can ride out the first part of the season without Fofana, without Evans, or if he thinks that needs investment. If he does, and he sees moving James Maddison, the player is falling out of favour a little bit with Brendan Rodgers, to be fair as well. You know, if he can move him on and get that money to then go and do that, then I don't see why he wouldn't. Matt says it was a horrible tackle. Yeah, to see that kind of tackle going in a friendly is just baffling, isn't it? It's mind-boggling to think that players like are that kind of... Look, on the one hand, it's an opportunity for some fringe players to impress and show what they want to do, and to play at 100%, you have to be all in. And I get that, but it's just, you know, the result of it is a horrific one. Obviously, if that result doesn't happen, if Fofana doesn't pick up the injury he does, then we're not really talking about that challenge, and we'll probably never discuss it ever again. But even still, looking at it and going, you know, and looking at it and looking at the consequences of it, you can't help but feel it's just completely unnecessary. And he's taken a risk, a massive risk. And unfortunately for Fofana and Leicester, it's had a really negative outcome, and big problem for Brendan Rodgers moving into the new season. And there we go. Right, we are going to leave it there. Big thank you to every single one of you for tuning in. I can see there's over 400 of you watching us live right now. Let's check out where we are in terms of likes. Likes really do help, and we had some great numbers on our podcasts yesterday, which was fantastic. So it's great to see they're being well received. There are 422 of you watching. There's 91 likes on the board. Let's try and get that up to 150, or as close to 150 as possible by the time the outro plays. There's more than enough of you watching. It's really easy. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Help us towards that milestone of 15k. We wanted to hit it by the end of the year, so if we could get there by the end of August, and we need about 200 more of you, I think that would be fantastic. So please do smash the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you all very, very soon with more Arsenal related content. Until then, take care. Ciao.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.